it's that time again, the time when we grab a bowl of cereal, ditch the button-down shirt for a little bit of retro clothing and some PJs, except the tie. Come on, it's Fright Films. I gotta keep the tie. And we take a look at the decade that I grew up in, the 90s. You know, back then it seemed mandatory that every show on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network had at least one creepy episode. Most shows got around this by just creating a Halloween special. But some shows went above and beyond, not only creating a Halloween episode, but giving us some other spooky episodes as well. And of course, these episodes always fascinated me. They were scary enough to stick with you, but not intense enough to provide nightmare fuel. And so I figured we'd take a look at today's episode. It involves one football-headed kid and his group of friends on a mission to find a haunted train. I've got my cereal ready, so let's enjoy a classic episode of Hey Arnold. I'm Ryan Reed, and this is Fright Films. Hey Arnold is an animated Nickelodeon show created by Craig Bartlett. It revolves around a kid named Arnold with a football-shaped head who lives in the city of Hillwood with his outrageous grandparents in their boarding house, along with his best friend Gerald, his bully-slash-secret love interest Helga, and a large cast of interesting characters. Arnold navigates through life and various obstacles and storylines that weren't really seen in a lot of kids' animation at the time. One of the things that people tend to remember about Hey Arnold is how oddly grounded it is. I mean, sure, it is an animated show, so it can stretch the limits of reality, but even still, Hey Arnold manages to deal with more real-life themes than a lot of other animated programs at the time. It dealt with elements of depression and anxiety and grief and loss and self-doubt and broken homes and all of this, while dealing with it in a very elegant way that never talks down to its audience, but still manages to create a very poignant yet often hilarious show. The show ran from 1996 to 2004 and ended up having a total of 5 seasons. During its original run, Hey Arnold the movie was released theatrically, but it wouldn't be until 2017 when we got the second film, Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie, which was released as a television movie to tie up loose ends from the end of the series. And while there are fantastic episodes all throughout Hey Arnold's run, I think a lot of fans, including myself, have a connection with the first season. Episodes like The Vacant Lot, Field Trip, Stoop Kid, Pigeon Man, and of course Arnold's Christmas introduced us to how strong this show could be, whether comedically, emotionally, or both. But this is Fright Films, of course, so we're not just talking about Hey Arnold in general. Instead, we're talking about a very specific Season 1 episode entitled The Haunted Train. And this episode has always stuck with me because of how atmospheric and genuinely creepy it is at times. The episode begins with the kids of Hillwood sitting around bored one afternoon. Grandpa Phil tries to fix this issue by telling them the legend of the haunted train, explaining that when he worked at the railways, he heard the story of a conductor who went mad and drove his train off the tracks. And ever since then, people who end up at the abandoned train station may end up on the train driven by this ghostly conductor, go through various creepy stages, only to end up on their final fiery destination. First of all, I absolutely love this story. It's just brought to life so well by the writing, the voice acting, and the beautiful hand-drawn animation. Grandpa Phil is played by Dan Castellaneta, who you may know as Homer Simpson, along with some other Springfield residents in The Simpsons. But here, he just knows how to play this character so incredibly well. Some of the interactions he has with the kids when he's telling this story are just hilarious.
Some say he drove it straight to, Midtown? Downtown? All the way downtown, to the very most southern point. You mean? That's right. Wow, he drove all the way to the South Pole? No, he drove the train straight down to the fiery underworld.
The episode handles moments like this brilliantly. Yes, it does know how to create tension, but it also knows how to add in comedic breaks so it never becomes too scary for younger viewers. But by the end of Grandpa Phil's story, Arnold, Helga, and Gerald all decide that night they're going to go to the abandoned train station to see if they can find the haunted train on its yearly anniversary. And it is here that the animation really gets to shine. Some people may find the animation of the first season a little rough around the edges, but I actually prefer it. The characters feel less stiff and have this kind of fluid quality to them, and the backgrounds have this gorgeous look, almost like they've been masterfully crafted with color pencils and paint. The color palette is also perfect here. Because of the unsettling nature of the episode, the art department gets to use a lot of sickly greens and deep reds and dark colors to great effect. Well, sure enough, a train does arrive, and our trio is pulled aboard by a blinding white light, just like in Grandpa Phil's story. They also begin to experience all the signs that Grandpa Phil described, including flickering lights, ear-splitting music, and the smell of rotten eggs. And I gotta say, for an 11-minute episode, this is really well paced. There's just enough time to create build-up for some mystique when the haunted train finally does arrive, and after that, it just chugs along at a great speed. It builds and builds and builds and creates more tension, but it also doesn't forget to stop for those moments of humor I talked about. In fact, this may have one of my favorite Brainy appearances of all time, when he just happens to be on the train for some reason.
This is it! I can feel the flames of the dark underworld flowing down the back of my neck! Huh? Brady, what are you doing here?
I don't know.
Finally, the train reaches its final stop to what appears to be the fires of the underworld. At this point, Arnold has devised a plan to use a fire hose on board to fight back the demons. And here come spoilers if you haven't seen the episode before or in a while. It turns out that they actually aren't on a haunted train at all. It's a train that picks up steel workers to take them to the steel mill, and every supernatural sign that they've experienced has a logical explanation. Later, the kids are being driven home by Grandpa Phil, and at this point Arnold tells him that he thinks Grandpa set them up and there is no such thing as the haunted train, to which Grandpa Phil replies,
Well, now I didn't say that.
What follows is a moment of Brainy sitting on a fence and watching as a speeding locomotive goes by with a ghostly conductor sitting on the front of it. And this ghostly conductor closes out the episode by singing one of the most catchy ghost story blues songs ever created, leaving us on just the perfect spooky note. Another thing that people tend to remember about Hey Arnold is the fantastic smooth jazz score that's throughout every episode, created by Jim Lang. And here, with the Haunted Train Blues, he just completely knocks it out of the park. Ever since I saw this episode back in 1996, I find myself just singing it at random times throughout my life. It's a fantastic piece of music, and if you haven't heard it, I recommend looking it up. But everything here just adds up to create one of my favorite episodes of Hey Arnold of all time. The writing, the music, the animation, the voice acting, the direction, all of it creates a beautiful, dark, mysterious, and hilarious episode of one of the most original Nickelodeon shows ever created. And it may not be the episode of Hey Arnold that everyone thinks of, but for me, we'll all be singing the Haunted Train Blues for a very, very long time. I'm Ryan Reed. Grab some cereal and go watch some Hey